So King Charles was rushed to the hospital in the middle of his cancer treatment, and the palace response was so carefully worded that it actually made everything feel more concerning, not less. And here's the part that really got me. While everyone was focused on the king being driven back to Clarence House, something much bigger was already in motion behind the scenes with Princess Catherine. I'm not talking about her gradual return to public life. I'm talking about a fundamental shift in how the monarchy actually operates, a transfer of real power that breaks over a century of royal tradition. And it's happening right now, not at some vague point in the future. Before we get into all of it, make sure you hit subscribe to Prime Archive so you don't miss any updates on this story. All right, let's get into what's actually going on. The timeline of Charles's hospitalization is what first caught my attention, because the palace framed it as almost routine. March 2025, he goes in for scheduled cancer treatment, experiences what they call temporary side effects, and needs a short period of observation in the hospital. He cancels his afternoon appointments, apologizes to the people he was supposed to meet, and by that same evening, he's back at Clarence House. The next day, March 28th, he's photographed leaving the house, waving from his car, doing the whole everything is fine performance. But here's what doesn't sit right. If you're experiencing side effects significant enough to require hospitalization, even briefly, that tells you the treatment itself is aggressive. This isn't maintenance. This isn't the reduced treatment plan he mentioned in that Channel 4 Stand Up to Cancer broadcast back in late 2024, where he called the possibility of scaling back a personal blessing. Something shifted between that optimistic interview and the moment he was taken to the hospital mid-treatment. Think about what that shift must have felt like for Charles personally. Here is a man who waited longer than any heir in British history to ascend to the throne, who spent decades preparing for this role, who finally stepped into it with a clear vision of what he wanted his reign to represent. And then almost immediately, he's facing a health crisis that forces him to confront his own limitations. That Channel 4 interview was genuinely hopeful. You could hear it in his voice, the relief of someone who believed the hardest part might be behind him. He talked about being able to do more, to engage more fully with the work he loves. And then March 2025 happened, and suddenly he's being rushed to the hospital in the middle of a treatment session. And all that optimism gets replaced by the cold reality that cancer doesn't follow a predictable script. It doesn't care about your schedule or your sense of duty or the fact that you're the head of state. It imposes its own timeline, and everyone around you has to adjust. And we still don't know what type of cancer Charles is dealing with. The palace disclosed the diagnosis in February 2024 after it was discovered during a procedure for a benign enlarged prostate, and they specifically confirmed it was not prostate cancer, but that's where the details end. Doctors who haven't treated him but understand how these announcements work have suggested it's likely a manageable but chronic form of cancer. Manageable but chronic. That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It means the treatment can control the disease, but it cannot completely cure it. There's no clean bill of health at the end of this road, just ongoing monitoring, ongoing treatment, and the constant possibility that your body will react badly to what's supposed to be helping it. That's the reality Charles is living with, and the March 2025 hospitalization made it clear that even reduced treatment doesn't mean easy treatment. You know what really struck me though? By October 2025, 7 months after that hospitalization, reports started circulating that Charles was seriously unwell. Sources close to the palace were hinting that Prince William might need to take on more royal duties as his father continued cancer treatment, and observers noticed a real uptick in William's official engagements. That's not what recovery looks like. A full recovery means a return to regular activities, not a carefully managed transition of responsibilities to the heir. What we're seeing is the palace managing both the illness and the public narrative around it simultaneously, and the cracks are starting to show. The palace communications team is walking an impossible tightrope. On one side, they need to project stability and continuity because the monarchy depends entirely on the perception that everything is under control. On the other side, they have to prepare for a transition that is clearly accelerating, and they have to do it without ever making it look like they're preparing for it. Every statement has to be calibrated, every public appearance choreographed to send a message of strength while quietly rearranging the furniture behind the curtain. This brings us to Catherine, because while Charles has been navigating his health crisis, she has quietly become the person the entire institution is leaning on. And I don't mean in some ceremonial, supportive wife of the future king kind of way. I mean, Charles has granted Catherine and William new powers that fundamentally change how the monarchy distributes authority. For over 100 years, the right to hand out royal warrants belonged exclusively to the reigning monarch and their consort. That's it. Only the king and queen could endorse businesses that supply goods and services to the royal household. Charles changed that. He gave William and Catherine that authority while he's still alive and still on the throne. This isn't symbolic. This is operational power being transferred a generation early, and it tells you everything about how Charles views his own capacity going forward and how much he trusts Catherine specifically to carry this weight. To understand how significant this is, you have to understand what royal warrants actually represent. These aren't just fancy coats of arms that companies get to put on their packaging. They are a direct economic link between the monarchy and British commerce. A royal warrant signals quality, tradition, and prestige, and for the businesses that receive them, it can mean the difference between thriving and merely surviving. When you walk into a shop and see that royal warrant displayed, you're looking at a relationship that has been carefully cultivated, sometimes over generations. By giving William and Catherine the power to grant these warrants, Charles has essentially said that they are now co-stewards of one of the monarchy's most important economic functions. He's not just delegating ribbon-cutting ceremonies and hospital visits. He's sharing the actual machinery of royal influence, and he's doing it while he's still very much alive and in charge. That's unprecedented. Catherine's influence in areas like fashion is already undeniable. Her choices cause products to sell out within hours. She's been actively promoting British craftsmanship, including a solo visit in September 2025, where she put that soft power on full display. But the royal warrants are different. That's a formal mechanism of influence, one that connects the monarchy directly to commerce and the economy in a way that matters to real businesses and real people. Giving Catherine that authority at 44 years old, after she's been through chemotherapy and remission, signals that she's not just preparing to be queen consort someday. She's stepping into the role now while Charles is still reigning, because the monarchy cannot afford to wait. The institution needs her operational capability, not just her symbolic presence. It needs her judgment, her instincts, her understanding of how to wield soft power effectively. And Charles, by making this move, has acknowledged that need publicly and formally. Her own health journey has been just as carefully managed as Charles's, and the parallels between their situations are impossible to ignore. Catherine announced her cancer diagnosis in March 2024. The same month, Charles's hospitalization would later occur. Her cancer was discovered during abdominal surgery in January 2024, a surgery the palace initially described as being for a non-cancerous issue. She went through chemotherapy, made that emotional video announcement from a garden outside Windsor, and gradually reappeared at events like Trooping the Color in June 2024. By September, she confirmed she was cancer-free, and in January 2025, she announced her remission. She visited the Royal Marsden, expressed gratitude to the staff there, and that visit became her first public engagement since returning to duties. Both she and Charles are now closely associated with promoting cancer care, and both have been held up as examples of transparency after generations of royals hiding their health struggles. But transparency is relative. We know Charles has cancer, but not what kind. We know Catherine completed chemotherapy, but not the specifics of her diagnosis beyond the fact that it was found during abdominal surgery. The palace gave the public enough information to feel informed without giving enough to actually understand the severity of either situation. And privately, doctors who understand these cases note that neither royal has been fully cured. Both continue to be monitored. Both are managing ongoing risks. Charles's March 2025 hospitalization proved that even when the public message is optimistic, the private reality is far more fragile. The palace has mastered the art of controlled disclosure, giving just enough to satisfy the public's need for information while withholding the details that might cause genuine alarm. It's a strategy that has worked for them historically, but in an age where information moves at lightning speed and speculation fills every gap, it's becoming harder to maintain. The stress on Charles isn't just physical either. February 19, 2026, Prince Andrew was arrested for misconduct in public office, and the scandal landed like a bomb at the worst possible moment. Andrew had already been stripped of his royal titles and duties, already been exiled from public life after his connection to Jeffrey Epstein destroyed whatever reputation he had left. But the arrest was different. It came after the U.S. Department of Justice released documents containing damaging emails from Andrew's time as the UK's trade envoy, and the palace wasn't warned in advance. Charles found out the same way most of the public did, blindsided by news that immediately revived every question about the monarchy's judgment and integrity. Imagine being in his position. You're dealing with cancer treatment, you're trying to hold the institution together, you're managing a carefully orchestrated transition of responsibilities to your son and daughter-in-law. And then out of nowhere, your brother's past comes roaring back into the headlines with the force of a freight train. Every headline about Andrew is a headline that isn't about the work the monarchy is doing. Every question about Andrew's conduct is a question about whether the institution itself is fundamentally broken. The impact on Charles was immediate and visible to those close to him. Catherine and William expressed deep concern, with insiders reporting that Charles felt drained and exhausted in the aftermath. Richard Fitzwilliams, a royal expert, emphasized that the pressures on the king are immense, especially given his health issues. Royal commentator Sandro Minetti went further, stating that the situation with Andrew will shape how Charles's entire reign is remembered. That's not hyperbole. When a king is already battling a chronic cancer diagnosis and then his disgraced brother gets arrested in a scandal that reopens the Epstein connection, the reputational damage compounds. It doesn't just affect Andrew. It affects the institution, and Charles is the one absorbing that blow, while his body is already fighting its own war. The stress of that kind of crisis has real physiological effects. It elevates cortisol levels, it disrupts sleep, it compromises the immune system at exactly the moment when the body needs all its resources to fight disease. You cannot separate the political crisis from the health crisis because they are happening in the same body, in the same person at the same time. Charles acted quickly, though. He's been more decisive with Andrew since succeeding to the throne in 2022, and this time he didn't hesitate. He had already been considering removing Andrew from his Windsor home, and after the arrest, he stripped Andrew of his prince title and evicted him from the estate in October. The public statement was notable for what it didn't say. Charles did not refer to Andrew as his brother. Commentators highlighted that omission immediately, and William and Catherine fully supported the statement, presenting a united front among the senior royals. But unity in a statement doesn't solve the deeper problem. The arrest revived scrutiny of the entire institution, and talk of abdication resurfaced almost immediately. People started asking the question that had been lurking in the background ever since Charles's diagnosis: can a king with a chronic illness, facing an endless series of crises, really continue to carry the full weight of the crown? Is it fair to ask him to, is it even in the best interest of the monarchy for him to try? The palace shut that down fast. A senior source clarified that abdication wasn't even whispered, that the king is staying. Full stop. Queen Camilla, Prince William, Catherine, Princess Anne, and Prince Edward were all consulted. And the official line is that there was no sense of panic, but the stress on Charles, physically, emotionally, and institutionally, has never been higher. He's managing his health, managing a major reputational crisis, and trying to prove he can still lead while two people in Kensington Palace are quietly preparing for a future that looks increasingly likely to arrive sooner than anyone expected. The word abdication carries enormous weight in the context of the British monarchy. It evokes the crisis of 1936 when Edward VIII gave up the throne for Wallace Simpson and plunged the institution into chaos. No one in the palace wants to go anywhere near that historical parallel, but the fact that the question is even being asked in reputable circles tells you how serious the situation has become. William and Catherine are being fast-tracked to the throne, and the transition is already happening. Royal expert Andrew Looney pointed out that the monarchy is in a transitional phase, And William is becoming more involved in important decisions, taking a more straightforward approach than his father about the challenges the monarchy faces. He's been leading investiture ceremonies for the king. He represented Charles at the COP30 World Leaders Summit in Brazil. He's been meeting with heads of state, performing royal duties without the official title, and now he and Catherine are officially recognized as grantors of royal warrants. That's real power transferred sooner than expected, and it shows they're being prepared for leadership right now, not in some distant hypothetical future. Every one of these steps is significant on its own, but taken together, they paint a picture of a monarchy that is actively restructuring itself around the reality of Charles's limitations. The investiture ceremonies are particularly telling. That's one of the most ancient and symbolically charged duties of the monarch, pinning medals on the chests of citizens who have served their country with distinction. When William performs those ceremonies, he's not just helping out. He's literally standing in the king's place, performing the king's role, embodying the continuity of the crown. Sources say the palace is discussing not if, but when the transition will happen. Their roles are becoming clearer, and both William and Catherine are ready to step into leadership when needed. They've learned to rely on each other, and they know they'll lead a smaller monarchy in the future. That vision of a smaller, more accountable monarchy is something they're both committed to. William is looking into how the Duchy of Cornwall is run. Both of them focus on impactful public work, William's homelessness project, Catherine's early years initiatives, the Earthshot Prize for the environment. They aim to lead with empathy and build strong connections with the public, and the approval ratings reflect that it's working. A YouGov survey found that 77% of people support Prince William and 74% support Princess Catherine. Those numbers are vital for an institution that relies entirely on public trust and support. Without that trust, the monarchy has nothing. It has no democratic mandate, no constitutional power it can wield independently, no army it can command. Its entire authority rests on the willingness of the public to believe in it, to support it, to see it as a net positive for the nation. William and Catherine understand this in a way that previous generations sometimes struggled to grasp. They know that the monarchy has to earn its place every single day, and their approval ratings suggest they're doing exactly that. Catherine's journey has been remarkable by any measure. She faced a cancer diagnosis, went through treatment, and has now returned to public life for over 2 years. In 2025, Charles was recognized as the hardest-working royal with 535 public appearances. Catherine ranked 10th with 68 engagements, and William had 202. But those numbers don't tell the full story. Catherine's schedule is increasing, and her upcoming royal tour to Italy marks a turning point. It will be her first solo international tour since her diagnosis, a significant moment that signals she's truly back and ready to carry the weight of her role on a global stage. The Italy tour is more than just a diplomatic visit. It's a statement. It says that Catherine is no longer in recovery mode, no longer easing back into public life, no longer operating with a reduced schedule. She's back at full capacity, and she's taking on the kind of high-profile international engagement that defines a senior royal's role. The Italians will be watching, the British press will be watching, and Catherine knows it. She's stepping onto that stage fully aware that every gesture, every outfit, every interaction will be analyzed for signs of strength or weakness. That takes a particular kind of courage, especially when you're still managing your own health in the background. When William and Catherine attended the 2026 BAFTAs, they presented a united front despite everything happening behind the scenes, the king's health issues, the Andrews scandal, the public scrutiny. Their appearance conveyed strength and support for the monarchy during a genuinely tough time. And everything they're doing now, the royal warrants, the solo tours, is aimed at maintaining public support for a smooth transition when the time comes. The BAFTAs appearance was classic royal stagecraft. They walked the red carpet, they smiled for the cameras, they chatted with nominees, and they made it all look effortless. But everyone watching knew that beneath the surface elegance, there was an enormous weight being carried. They were there to reassure the public that the monarchy is stable, that the next generation is ready, that the institution can weather any storm. And they pulled it off. because that's what they've been trained to do, what they've been preparing for, what Catherine in particular has mastered over 2 decades of public life. The reality is that Charles is still active, still reigning, still making decisions like stripping Andrew of his title and evicting him from Royal Lodge. But Catherine is stepping up in ways that go far beyond what anyone expected when she first married into the family. She's not just waiting to become queen, she's already shaping what the monarchy will look like when she and William are at the helm, and she's doing it while managing her own health, her young children, and the relentless pressure of an institution that desperately needs her to succeed. Both she and William have overcome their own cancer challenges, and now they're leading the monarchy through its most difficult period in decades, one appearance at a time, one decision at a time. While the king they're preparing to succeed continues his own private battle with a disease the palace still won't fully name. That's the reality of the British monarchy in 2026. It's an institution in transition, not in some theoretical future sense, but right now, in real time, with real stakes. Charles is still the king, still on the throne, still making the hard calls, but the power is shifting quietly, deliberately, irrevocably to the Prince and Princess of Wales. And when the history of this period is written, people will look back and realize that the moment everything changed wasn't a coronation or an abdication or a dramatic public announcement. It was a series of small, careful decisions made in the shadow of illness, each one moving the monarchy closer to its next chapter, each one preparing William and Catherine for the roles they were always destined to fill. Each one acknowledging what everyone in the palace already knows but cannot say out loud, that the reign of King Charles III, for all its promise and all its hope, is being shaped far more by the limits of his body